Hello and welcome to the Freedom Seeker Show, the talk show where women share their experiences in an unfiltered way so that they can empower others to do the same. Today we're going to talk about something that is very near and dear to our hearts. I've brought a really good friend of mine to this who's been dealing with anxiety, as have I. And I thought that this was a really timely topic for us to share and bring some light and awareness to, because I feel that telling stories is actually a really great way to heal some of those emotions that we may have suppressed, or they're really deep down somewhere in our soul. And by sharing these stories, we bring these emotions back to light. And that might feel yucky, it might feel gross, but it's the only way, in my opinion, how we can heal some of those suppressed emotions. So having said that, I would love to welcome Nicole Edmonds to the talk show today, and we'll chat a little bit more about our journey around how anxiety has been involved in our lives and how it has shown up in our businesses and our relationships. Before we get started, though, I feel silly that I even have to say this disclaimer, but I need to say we are not doctors, we're not therapists, we're not experts, but we are two women who have struggled for a long time with anxiety, and we're just sharing our story today and how it has influenced or affected us in our lives. So here we go.
No matter what your dreams or obstacles, you're not alone, and you have the power to change your life and change the world. Join me and inspired freedom-seeking women from around the world as we explore ideas and tools and new methods to live your life your way and serve the world with your unique gifts. And thank you for helping me spread the word of feminine wisdom by subscribing, liking, and sharing your favorite episodes.
Thank you so much for coming and doing this episode with me, because I know this is not necessarily an easy topic for you can even tell in my voice I'm shaking a bit, because it brings up a lot of stuff, doesn't it?
Gets real.
So thank you for doing this with me and for doing this for our listeners.
Yeah, happy to.
Such an important topic. So Nicole, you're from Australia.
Yes.
And you moved here at the tender age of 18.
Yes.
My goodness. What are you willing and able to share? What was it that had you uproot this early in your life, leaving your family, your friends, everything you knew behind, and moving like continents away and starting a life here by yourself?
Yeah. So, I guess it was all triggered by just going through a rough time of a lot of anxiety, depression. So I've always been a bit of a perfectionist in my studies in school and everything. So I went through high school, I tried really hard, studied really hard, and then I went straight into university, and because I figure, that's kind of what you're supposed to do. Yeah. And I was still 17 years old, so I thought, okay, I'd love to do a gap year, but I'm just going to go to university and then maybe I'll do it later. And so I started, and that was honestly probably one of the worst 6 months of my life. And I think it's because I didn't want to be there at the time. So I struggled through, and I was just completely miserable. And I've always been a bit of a shy person, always had some anxiety, but there was something that just drove me to move away and just do something completely different. And it was crazy because I wasn't even nervous about it. For someone who, I'm nervous about the little things that happen in everyday life, I just knew I needed to make a change. And I think that's something that I've learned with myself, is when I feel the worst is when I think, okay, this is when I need to make a big change in my life, and this is probably the last time I feel like doing it, but I need to just like make something different. So I finished 6 months of university, did my exams and everything, and I decided to defer for a year. And yeah, I just started looking at options of places to go, and Canada's just so easy for Australians, and everyone I spoke to knew someone who's been here or has been here themselves. So I thought, you know what, I'll just go to Canada, go there for a winter, do 6 months and come home, and then I'll be ready to study. And yeah,
how long ago was that?
6 years ago. So yeah, I never ended up going back. I met my boyfriend here after about 2-3 weeks. So things didn't exactly go to plan, but I stick by that decision that I made, that I just had to make a change. And my first 6 months here was honestly some of the happiest times in my life. Yeah, it was just exactly where I felt like I needed to be. And it was like I found a new home in a way. Yeah.
Incredible. Incredible. I was saying earlier, this is the part that I really resonated with, Nicole, when I first met you on, is this, I guess, starting a whole new life on a different continent, and uprooting, this feeling of uprooting, because that's really what it is. Yeah. But I love that you knew with so much certainty that was what you needed to do, and especially, and I don't know if this is as well rehearsed in Australia as it is here, but once you commit to university, it's like I've always felt like I needed to finish it. Like the option of breaking it up and just taking a sabbatical for however long didn't even occur to me, even though that's probably exactly what I needed to do at the time. So I really admire that you had that insight or that wisdom within you to do that for yourself.
I think I'm honestly really lucky that my parents kind of also saw what I needed to do. They've always supported that I did come over here, and I think it was their help that kind of made me feel okay about that. And when I met with the program coordinator for my university, she was really supportive too, and she was like, you know, it sounds like an amazing opportunity. Go do it. Like, you've been doing great in your classes, so come back when you're ready, type thing. So it was nice to have that support, because I know not everyone has support when they want to.
It's very selfless.
Yeah.
It's really incredible, actually, especially for parents. Yeah. I mean, how often do you see them?
They like to come visit me, so we generally see each other every year.
Once a year.
Yeah. But still,
It's
a big jump.
It is a big jump. Yeah, for sure it is. Well, I'm glad you're here. Yeah. So tell me, so you said you actually experienced anxiety in university. So how long, like how far back can you think since you've experienced anxiety?
Probably being a young child, probably like 10, 11.
Wow. So you've dealt with it most of your life. Yeah. And how does it show up for you?
A lot of the time for me, it comes out in stomach issues, and that was the main thing for me growing up. As I've got older, it's kind of changed, but I always remember having stomach aches, especially when I was scared to go somewhere or anything like that. And I struggled a lot in high school as well. I'd have days where I felt so sick, and my mum would drive me to school late, and I'd just sit in the car and cry, and she'd be like, okay, just let's not do this today, because it was like I made myself feel sick kind of thing. With the anxiety, it's just kept building and building. So as I've gotten older, it's kind of presented itself in different ways. I've had more anxiety attacks now that I'm older, but as a kid it was mostly stomach. So
you are an entrepreneur, and you tell us a little bit about your business that you have now.
So it's with makeup. So I love teaching women how to apply makeup, and obviously I love playing with it on myself as well. So it's kind of a combination of both, kind of like playing with makeup and being a makeup artist, but also making things simple so that everyone can do it.
Can
as
feel
well.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I love your tagline. You know, it's making everyone feel like they're someone.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really cool.
And I think when you know how to apply makeup, even if it's just mascara or something, and you feel great, like people see that, and it makes you feel really confident and beautiful. So
it's one way of just manipulating your radiance, even on the days that it may not be feeling like you want to shine.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those. Since I've known you, I've seen those a few times on your social feed, you know, and you've been very open about the struggles that you're going through in terms of your anxiety and such. How has this affected your business?
Honestly, it's so interesting because being an anxious person, obviously it has its negative effects, but it also kind of makes you really passionate about things in a way, makes you think about things a lot. So I've kind of experienced both sides of that. Obviously it's tough some days to show up, especially with such a social media based business, and look happy and pretend that life is amazing. And I just realized that I didn't want to be someone who portrays that, because I know so many people, like you said, struggle silently, and looking at social media can make you feel worse sometimes. Because you go through and everyone's posting their highlight reel, I like to say, so like their trips or when they've have been all dressed up and all the best times, but people don't really share the tough times. Yeah, so I've tried to kind of incorporate that into my business to show people who are similar to us that you can still be an entrepreneur and have anxiety. And like I said, it makes me passionate because my brain is always going, and having something that I care about to think about all the time almost makes me very productive, I guess. So
you're seeing this as more of a your purpose in life is to shine some light on that. Like in a sense, I'm hearing you say like this experience that you're going through so that you can share it with other people, which I think is what we're all needing to do. You know, by sharing our stories, we start healing. We start healing those aspects of ourselves. And I would imagine you probably feel that. I would hope that you can see that there is a I don't think cure is the right word, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, like that your anxiety can be mended. Or do you feel at this point you've dealt with it for so long that that anxiety is always part of you? Like where do you stand on that?
Yeah, it's a tough one because I think partly like it is just part of my personality and who I am, but I guess it's all about figuring out how to still be your best. And like I was saying, kind of like almost embracing it in a way. I don't know.
Letting it be the messenger. Of what your soul is asking for, crying for.
And I mean, if my mind's going to be going crazy all the time, thinking about everything, I'd rather be thinking about something that I'm passionate about. So I think it's kind of learning to adapt and how to, I guess, still be your best person while being an anxious person. If that makes sense.
It does. I feel like where I'm with this right now is that anxiety is really just a form of my body trying to tell me that something isn't the way it's feeling it needs to be. Mm-hmm. And anxiety is especially an emotion a suppressed emotion that you've experienced very early in your childhood. Perhaps you saw something, you witnessed something, you've experienced something, and every time now you come into a situation that is bringing that experience back in your subconscious is when your anxiety flares up. And so I love how you said that anxiety for you is actually helping you become that better person. Like, it's giving you this sense of purpose. And I would push you a little bit on this and say, yes, absolutely, listen to it, embrace it, because anxiety needs to be heard. It wants to be felt. It needs to say something. So what is it that it's saying? What is it that it's crying out for? My coach actually has an amazing philosophy on this that I'm really trying to embrace. And it's tough because that's not what I learned. Like, I grew up in systems, cultural systems that always said, well, you have this label, anxiety. Now you're an anxious person. Now take these pills. This is your life. And I don't subscribe to that.
I would definitely have to agree that you do have to listen to it. Like I was saying, before I left home, I was feeling worse than ever. And over the summer this year, it's been a really tough time for me as well. And when like the negative thoughts start to take over and, like you said, kind of losing your breath, like I said, I've had a lot more panic attacks in the past year or two than ever before. And I think when those things happen, you do really have to take a look at why it might be happening. And for me, it's definitely when I know that I'm unhappy with an aspect of my life, and I know that I need to make a change.
So what do you think was so right in the first 6 months of being in Canada when you felt the happiest?
I guess part of it was just knowing in that moment there was nowhere else I needed to be, nothing else that I felt that I needed to be doing with my life. I mean, just turning 18 and moving away, it was all about just being happy. And like I said, I met my boyfriend, and so obviously I was in a very happy time and meeting so many new people, and life was just carefree at that point. And I mean, living in the mountains and living in staff residence, you don't have to worry about too much. Everything's taken care of. You know, your rent is just taken off your paycheck, so you don't even see it go, and so much free food and everything, and there wasn't really much else going on that I had to worry about, other than just myself.
And then life started to become what again?
I guess then, after living in the mountains for a few years, you kind of start to miss normal life. And it's like you're very isolated, and like just little things like, I just wish I could go see a movie or something.
True,
but also getting a little bit older, it kind of started to hit me like, what am I going to do with my life? And I was like, I can't live in the mountains forever. I have to figure out what I want to do. And then that's when the anxiety starts kicking again, 'cause going back to normal life and trying to find your way in the world it's always scary.
So it sounds to me like the anxiety keeps showing up for you when you're being forced into a path, if you will, that maybe that's not your path, right? Like this normalcy, like going to school, like that's what was expected of you, but maybe you didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Or, you know, being in the mountains, and now suddenly you felt like, oh my goodness, life's passing by and I'm doing all the things I love to do, but I'm not supposed to be in this position anymore. I need to be, does that feel like, does it resonate?
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's hard to put it into words, all the different stages that I've been through. And if I don't feel passionate about something and I don't see an end goal, that's when I start to question what I'm doing. And that's why university was so tough for me, because I wasn't doing it because I wanted to do this at the end. I did a course that was very broad, and I'd still have to narrow down what I wanted to do after. So I didn't really have a goal in mind. And then I guess eventually, after living in the mountains for a while again, I didn't really have a goal. I wasn't working towards anything. So then that's when we moved to Calgary, and then I went to school for aesthetics. And so that was a goal for me, and I achieved that. And
were you anxious during that time?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Moving to Calgary, my boyfriend's from Calgary, but it was kind of I got a job, so that was why we ended up moving back to Calgary. And my goal after getting this job was to put myself through aesthetic school and then start doing treatments at this spa that I was working at. So yeah, through that time I was working towards something, and I knew what I wanted. So again, it was easy. Life was happy. Yeah. And then things start to I guess throw you off your path a little bit. And yeah, that's kind of what I've been going through this year, is just I don't have that end goal in sight.
You know, so I can definitely see that there's a relationship there for sure between this sense of purpose and meaning and fulfillment, and the anxiety creeping back up. So coming back to your business for a moment, you know, like you said, your business is very camera, social media is very open, and so how you said you made a decision to be very public about the struggles that you've had. What else have you been doing to, I guess, cope with your anxiety?
That's a tough one. I'm still, I guess, figuring it out. Other than making changes in my life, I guess, I'm still trying to work out what the best ways to get on top of it when I'm in those really dark times. And like we said, that's the last time you really want to be making changes in your life. So yeah, I think that's one of the hardest things, is finding what works for you. 'Cause I mean, the same things don't work for everyone.
No.
Lots of suggestions that I've had in the past, I know, aren't for me. When I get into a really anxious state, like slow breathe, like someone telling me to breathe slowly, like I know for me that does not work.
No.
Just makes me feel like a little bit crazy. I'm
Yeah.
like, don't tell me how to breathe. So things like that, it's like,
well, even meditation, it's really hard to meditate when you're not in that place, like when you're barely hanging on and you're just barely trying to get through. So I get that. I definitely do. You know, and I like how you said not everything works for everyone. There's I think everyone needs to find their own approach. But that's why we're having this conversation, is to bring awareness to it, so that at the very least people recognize that the situation they're in, this feeling of helplessness or hopelessness, or this feeling of not being able to breathe, or this feeling of panic attacks that some of us experience, is not something you need to live with. Like, it's not something that is normal, if you will. And even though we might have put it into that shelf of, well, this has been 15 years of my life or 20 years of my life, I think that would be the strongest message I would want to bring across today, is that none of us have to live with those things, and no, not what works for me may not work for Nicole, what works for Nicole may not work for me. So everything we're just talking about are just things we may do, but you need to find your own way. But one thing I definitely do know that works incredibly well is talking about it with somebody, and talking it out. And I don't have all of the loose ends on this yet, so I don't want to talk about it too much, but I feel very strongly that there's this connection between these unhealed, unprocessed stories of our lives that are coming back up to the surface and are showing up in forms of anxiety or depression or other mental health related diseases, if you will. And some of them are very extreme, and they do absolutely need medical attention, and there's no ifs or buts about it. You know, they may need pharmaceuticals, they may need psychiatry, they may need psychology, but I think the majority of us can really get away with some very holistic type of methods, such as telling your story, or if you don't want to tell it to someone, start writing about it, journaling it out. Everyone's probably going to laugh now because I always talk about journaling, but journaling it out is a big one and has been such a big part of my life, because therein I see the patterns, you know, of the different things, because I do believe that if we don't deal with certain emotions or patterns, they will come back. They will find a way to show up again for us. So why you're maybe experiencing this anxiety again right now, I bet you if you looked into it and asked some more questions, I bet you there's a pattern that it looks very similar to when your anxiety was the highest when you were back in Australia making the decision to come to Canada. Like when you get to that point, I bet you there's a pattern there. So telling your story, and sometimes that may need sometimes it needs nobody but yourself and a pen and a journal. And other times that could involve a friend. Other times it could involve a coach or a therapist of some sort that will guide you through some of these things. But talking about it is so helpful, because it just lifts this like these things, and it brings you on a journey of discovery, I find. Right? Like it's when I look into these questions for myself, sometimes with my coach, sometimes just on my own, I go, wow, I never even thought about that. You know, like I was talking about joy the other day in my blog for this month, and I came to realize that the reason why joy is probably so far away from me in reach is because I had never really been lived or shown what joy looks like. You know, but if you don't ask these questions, and if you don't actually give yourself the opportunity to dive into that, it's really hard to discover those things, right? But now that I'm on that path, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. So what would joy look like if I would have had it, you know? And then start going from there. But I digress on a different topic altogether. Although, is it really that different? It's the exact opposite of anxiety. So
exactly, right?
So there's anxiety and there's joy. I want to get to this side.
Exactly. Don't we all?
So what would bring you joy?
What would bring me joy? That's a tough question.
See? It's a tough question, right? It really is a tough question. But I think it's a worthwhile question. It's a question that I think will get you closer will get you closer to joy and further away from anxiety.
And with what you were saying about talking about it, it's definitely one of the biggest things for me sometimes, just talking it out, even if it doesn't make sense or whatever. It feels good to tell that story. And I think in a way that's kind of when I share posts on Facebook and things like that about my anxiety, that's kind of a way for me to tell my story. And it almost helps for me knowing that other people who feel the same will see it, and then they'll feel less alone. And I think that talking about it it's so important, because when you talk about it with someone who has been through the same thing, you start to realize that it's not just you. And like sometimes you start to feel a little crazy, and it's like, what's going on with me? And when someone else experiences it too, it's like, okay, I'm not alone in this.
No, that's right.
And yeah, I think that really helps. So finding someone that can even relate to what you're going through, so you don't have to go through it alone. It's not just on you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Someone who is not listening to give advice, but just listening. Just listening to have you have the opportunity to speak it out loud. Because there's a difference between thinking it, speaking it, and writing it. And I think that's why I'm so drawn to journaling, is because when I'm just thinking it, I'm in my head. And that means I'm inevitably starting to do that merry-go-round thing. And and the story goes like, it's that spiral, you know, and you just keep going deeper and deeper into this land of stories. And none of them have truth anymore to it. Whereas when I speak it, it comes out like, have you ever done that where you thought of something and then when you open your mouth it came out completely differently? Well, that's kind of how speaking works for me. When I speak it out, it just comes in the delivery, the words I choose, everything happens in a different way. And that's the same as it happens to me when I write. This is like, what I'm thinking is not necessarily what's ending up on paper. So,
and sometimes for me, when I kind of get into that state, like you're saying, that merry-go-round of thoughts, and when I say it out loud, I realize it's not true. And
that's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, because you start to get these ideas in your head that, I don't know, things that are wrong in your life and why they're wrong, and then you tell someone and it's like, that's ridiculous. Like, why would I say that? Like, it was really mean about me, or it was mean about you, and I didn't mean it. And it's like, voicing those thoughts makes them real, and then makes you realize that they're not true.
So true. So true. Yeah, it's a really good insight, actually. Really good. Yeah. So talk it out. Find someone to talk to. And or write if you don't like talking to people. And there's definitely a trust factor, which is one of my goals with this, is to start breaking down this fear of talking about it. You know, this fear of judgment, that you're crazy, or that, you know, you're just sensitive, or whatever else. It's a real fear. Let me say that it's a real fear. It's been part of my life for most of my life, that I thought I can't be sensitive or show that I'm sensitive, because that would make me weak, or that would make me, people would judge me for it. And goes right back to what you said about your business. There's this perception that you have to have it all together in order to portray the successfulness in your business, or the success in your business. And I think that's wrong. I don't think that people don't buy that. All they buy is the jealousy of like the highlight reel. And you're becoming part of that now, right? And that's not where I'd like to be either. So I too have chosen to be more authentic in my business, and to share the good and the bad. You know, but it's definitely a vulnerable spot. How did you overcome this vulnerability?
I'm not even sure. Like, thinking back on it, I'm not sure when I decided to start sharing these things or why. But I think part of it just was almost writing it down, but for me, writing it down on my phone, thinking through my thoughts, almost it gave me a way to see the silver lining once I started kind of thinking about it and putting it into words. I could see how there could be a silver lining and it could maybe help someone else.
Yeah.
And I guess just seeing that it kind of was starting to help me think differently was what motivated me to keep doing it. And then sometimes I've had some people reach out and say that things that I've shared have helped them. So hearing things like that has just made me like not even question it anymore. It's like, if I can make myself vulnerable to help someone else, then let's do it.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
And you probably experienced some healing yourself in all of this
Definitely.
as well.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. So if there was something you wanted to share that's really on your heart about the topic of, on Wednesday we have World Mental Health Day, and that's kind of what inspired all of this, is to bring that awareness, because that's what World Mental Health Day is all about, is to raise awareness around the all of the several intricacies around mental health around the world, and obviously influencing some change and some solutions. So if there was something that you wanted to share, what would that be?
I think it would be, just don't be afraid to reach out and tell someone when things aren't okay, because you can't get through it all alone. And this idea that we don't talk about it is just crazy to me, because that's the one thing you need to do to get through it. And I know it's tough, because I'm sure some people have tried, and maybe there's people who don't understand, but you've just got to find people who are close to you or who you know have been through similar things, and just talk about it with them, because you're not alone. We are all struggling with it, and I just hope that we can start talking about it. And obviously it doesn't have to be as open as what I've been doing, because I know it's scary, but every time we do open up like that, even just with the people closest to us, it also breaks down that wall for them to come to you as well. So
absolutely, which is the theme of this talk show, is women sharing their experiences so that we can empower other women to do the same. And that's the principle behind all of this, is by sharing. We give others, maybe they don't have their voice right away, but we give others the opportunity to at least recognize that what they're feeling, they're not alone, and what they're feeling, it can be different. It doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be hurtful. Yeah.
And I know one of the hardest things is when you're at one of your lowest times, is to think that things will ever be good again. But when you're feeling your worst, that's not forever. That's just something that you can push through, and things are going to be happy again, and you'll start to feel happy again slowly. And it takes time, and it takes help from other people, and figuring out what you need, what your anxiety is saying to you. But if you work through it, you'll be happy again. It's not the end of happiness. It's just a rough time.
Yeah, totally. And if I could add to that, it's giving yourself the break that anxiety is calling for. For me, at least, that's one of the biggest things, is that rather than the push through, is to really just allow yourself to take the day off and go for a walk in nature. Treat yourself to a really unbelievably nutritious meal or smoothie or something that nourishes your body. Take a bath, even if you just took a bath yesterday. If your body needs some time out, and that's what it's aching for and screaming at you for, is then give it that, and then talk to someone the next day. You don't have to. I think this is actually one of those things I had to really learn to overcome, is this this need to immediately numb out the pain. That's my first reaction when I'm in pain. I want to just immediately move to pain-free. So I'll do whatever it takes to like get rid of the pain. But when I actually give it the opportunity to feel the pain, that's when I see what the pain is about. Whereas if I immediately move to numbing it out, that's when basically I move further and further away from what the source of the problem is. Yeah. So I would just add that piece to it, is that when you do feel like there's no sunshine ahead, know that that's not true, that there will be sunshine again, but that right now you just need to attend to yourself and not distract from it. Don't push it to the side. Don't disregard it. The feelings of loneliness. If you're feeling lonely, then go find somebody that you can talk to or hang out with. And if you're feeling like you need to be quiet, or you need some time alone, then go and do that. Yeah. That would be all I would add to that.
Yeah. I think that's been one of the hardest things for me, is to put myself first and let go of the guilt. It's like I've been on my way to work and had a panic attack, and I still feel like I have to show up even if I'm a complete mess when I get there. And I've been lucky to have my boyfriend Colin with me, and he's like, don't do this to yourself, take care of yourself. They can figure it out. Yeah. And I think when you're an anxious person, but you're also feeling really down and depressed, it's like they're working against each other.
They sure are.
Yeah. It's like you don't feel like doing anything, and you feel like you need time to yourself, but your anxiety is telling you that everyone's going to be mad at you, and they're going to, you're going to get in trouble, and it's going to be a terrible day for everyone else because you're putting yourself first. And I'm still working on trying to find that middle point and let myself take care of me.
Yeah. Something I heard you say just now, that I've been doing a lot of research into, mainly with Dr. Wayne Dyer, is the reframing of the I am. So you just identified as an anxious person, and earlier you said you have an anxious personality. What he suggests is that we actually don't don't identify as that, like give ourselves that label, because then we're implying that that's who we are.
Forever.
Yeah, exactly. So instead saying, I am peace, I am joy. I guess I was saying, this feeling of anxiety for me is about joy. So I am joy, and not putting myself into that corner of I'm an anxious person, because that's a lot harder to get out of. Definitely. For myself. So maybe that might work for you, and for anyone listening to this as well, is to not identify, because language, our thoughts, create our actions, right? So as we identify as such, and we keep telling ourselves that's who we are, of course that's what we're going to be. It's really hard to get out of. Really hard to get out of. Well, it's not. Sorry, it's not really hard to get out of. All you have to do is switch the record. And just say something different. that said, I don't want to undermine how difficult it can be for people, especially severe cases of depression, that need the clinical attention. You know, I'm like I said before, I've come from a family history that has had severe clinical mental issues, and you couldn't just pray that out or you know, change your wording. It needed, at least at the beginning, it needed clinical interference, and then it could, you know, then with holistic means it could also be. So I don't want to give the impression that I'm undermining the severity of some cases, but what I do feel very strongly about is that we don't need to treat all issues right away with a clinical solution.
Yeah,
that's what I meant by that.
Yeah, definitely. If you look at, like, what you said earlier just keeps coming back to me. What is your anxiety saying to you? That's probably first step.
Yeah, exactly. What is it about? What's trying to emerge?
Yeah.
My coach would be really proud of me right now. Yeah, that's what she always says. She says, "What's anxiety need, Angel?"
Yeah, I love that.
What does anxiety need? Well, and that's how I arrived at joy. It was a great question. Yeah. Because that's how I arrived at joy.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you. I think it takes a tremendous amount of courage and bravery to be as vulnerable as you are about such an intimate issue, and especially for how long you've been dealing with this, and sharing with us some of the things you have done to navigate those struggles. Yeah. And I wish for you that you find a really great resource to alleviate that anxiety, because I don't believe that it is your personality and that you need to be anxious for the rest of your life. I don't believe that at all. So I really hope that you find it in your time, on your own path. But I think you're on a great path because you're so aware of what's happening, and that's always the first step, is awareness, right? So thank you very much
thank you
for doing this with us, and if you would like more information on this topic, I will put my link on the bottom of this video so that you can contact me and we can chat more about this. I'll also include some of the resources that I've used and that Nicole has used as well, and we'll put them in the show notes. All right. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Ciao.
Bye.
As always, the best conversations happen after the episode on yvonnewinkler.com/The Freedom Seeker Show. So go there, leave a comment, and let me know what resonated most with you and why. And while you're there, be sure to subscribe to our email list and become a Freedom Seeker Insider. You will get instant access to an audio I created called The 5 Steps to a Freedom Life, as well as some special content, exclusive giveaways, and some personal updates from me that I don't share anywhere else except maybe texting my BF.